Hi, welcome back. So we're going to continue from our last session on functions where we created a simple function with no inputs and no return. Alright, so if you haven't seen that video, please go and see that first. Alright, and in this video I'm going to talk about the second type of functions where we have input parameters and no return. Okay, so we're going to create a function where we're going to pass in a value, all right, or multiple values, and that function is going to perform some action for us. All right, so what I'm going to do is first let's run this to make sure everything is okay. All right, so I'm going to create, for example, two variables, num1 and num2. Okay, so for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to give some values, okay, to num1 and num2. Alright, and what I want to do is I want to create a function where I call that function, and when I call the function I'm going to pass in input parameters. Alright, and that function is supposed to perform the addition of these numbers and print out the result. Alright, now let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing is we want to create the function. So as I mentioned before, alright, what you need to do is you need to make sure that when you create a function, there are three parts. Okay, so let's revise again. Okay, so we always have our main function. Okay, and here what I'm doing is I'm going to create another function, and let's call this function add. Alright, so when I create the function, I need to specify the input parameters in the bracket here and the return. So this is always the input, okay, the input parameters, and this is the return. Okay, so for now we are not going to have any return, so I'm going to keep this as void. And for the input parameters, I need to make sure I specify, alright, the data type here. Okay, now let's see how to do this in the code. Alright, so I'm going to create this function called void add, and I'm going to pass in two variables. So for the function input parameters, I must also have two variables. Okay, and I'm going to call it x and y. Okay, so the names do not have to match anything. Alright, you can choose any names you like. They don't have to follow the names of the variables in the function that is actually calling this function here. Okay, so for example, I'm going to use main to call add. Okay, and in main the variable names are num1 and num2. Alright, but that doesn't matter over here. Okay, I can use any variable name that I like. Okay, now how do I call add? I just, as before, alright, I use the function name. Alright, and in the earlier video there were no input parameters, so this was empty in the bracket. But in this case I have two input parameters, so I need to pass into input parameters when I call add. So I'm going to pass num1 and num2. Okay, so what is happening here? Okay, what is happening here is when I call, okay, so here I have num1, okay, and num2. Okay, so when I call add, okay, and I pass in num1 and num2, okay, and of course here I have x and y. Alright, so what happens is this first parameter gets passed to the first input in the add function, and this second parameter gets passed to the second input in the function. Okay, so num1 will go to x, alright, and num2 will go to y. Alright, and what do I want to do in this add function? I just want to compute the addition of x and y and print out the result. Alright, so I can say integer result, okay, and I'm just going to compute the result here. Result equals to x plus y, and see out addition result equals to, alright, so let's run this. Okay, so you can see the addition result is 12. Okay, so what is happening here? In the main function, I have declared some parameters num1 and num2, and I am passing these parameters to another function called add. Alright, and inside add, I am taking in two parameters and performing some operation, in this case the addition operation, and printing out the result. Okay, you can of course keep on calling this function again and again. Alright, as long as I pass in two parameters, it is fine. So in this case, for example, I passed in num1 and num2. I can choose to pass in just any number, for example 12 and 15. Alright, so I just pass in two numbers directly, also it is fine. Okay, so the very first time that I call add function, I will take num1 and num2, 5 plus 7, and I print out 12. The second time it is 12 plus 15, so I print out 27. Okay, so you can keep calling the function again and again whenever you want to perform this particular operation that is defined in the function. Alright, so that is the good part of functions. Alright, you only write the code once, and whenever you need that code to be executed, you call the function. Alright, so this is the function call. Okay, so to put some comment, this is the function call. Alright, this is the function definition. Alright, now there's also a function declaration. Now, a function declaration is needed if your functions are placed after the main. Alright, so right now when I run, there's no problem. Alright, but if I were to put this function definition after the main function, alright, and if I try to run, there will be an error that says that add was not declared. Alright, so if your functions are placed after the main, then I need to add a declaration. So what is a declaration? I need to place the data types, okay, the function, and the input. Alright, the important thing is, for the function declaration, okay, you only need to specify the data types. You don't need to specify the name of the variables you're using, but if you want, you can specify the names, okay, but it's not necessary. Okay, you are just declaring that I'm having a function, alright, called add, where I'm having two input parameters of type integer, and there is no return. Okay, so now if I run it, okay, it runs correctly. Okay, so for a function, again there are three parts to it: the function declaration, function definition, and the function call. Alright, so I hope this gives you a good idea how to use functions with input parameters. Alright, so we started off with the basic functions, no inputs. Now the second type, which is with input parameters, and in the next video I'm going on to the third type, alright, with input parameters and return value. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.